Good morning, Kuhner country. Okay, my friends. Holy shamoly. Chicken Little, Dr. Anthony Fauci. His image is now destroyed. His credibility is in tatters. His reputation will never, ever recover from yesterday's hearing in front of Senator Rand Paul's committee. And for those of you that don't know, Senator Rand Paul issued a subpoena to Tony Fauci. In fact, he did this months ago. Fauci refused the subpoena. Now we know why. He was forced to comply and come in front of the committee. And rather than answer a single question about his role and involvement from the origins of COVID, i.e. funding the gain of function research that led to the COVID-19 virus, which resulted in millions of people dying around the world, to his disastrous lockdowns, school closures, business shutdowns, massive violations of civil liberties, mask mandates, vaccine mandates. I could go on and on. He instead invoked the fifth. He invoked the fifth 111 times. Even when Senator Josh Hawley, in a moment where they were now just so eviscerating Fauci, almost mocking him, showing him for the pathetic little megalomaniac and liar that he is, the fraud that he is, the mass murderer that he is. What day is it today? I invoke the fifth. What color is your tie? I invoke the fifth. What color is the carpet that we have in front of us here? I invoke the fifth. It was pathetic. It was honestly, utterly pathetic. And my friends, in a way, he had no choice. He had no choice. Because what happened, and this will go down in history as a watershed moment, no question, no question. One of the most important, consequential Senate committee hearings ever is that RFK Jr., HHS Secretary, and his team were able to dig up Fauci's diary on the server at the Department of Health and Human Services. And Fauci had no idea, the idiot had no idea that he had saved it on a server. And RFK got it, and he then handed it over to Rand Paul's committee. And so they had his diaries, 1,100 pages from December 2019 all the way until his retirement in December 2020. And Rand Paul had released the diaries. We talked about it a couple days ago. Honestly, that beggar belief when you read them. Chilling. And what they show in Fauci's own writing, in black and white, it is irrefutable that Fauci is a liar. Fauci is a fraud. Fauci committed crime after crime after crime. And yes, he is one of the greatest mass murderers in history. That what he was saying in public were lies that he was directly contradicting in private, and that he admitted to some of the most diabolical actions and decisions a scientist has ever committed. And so the problem now was, even though he had been given a full unconditional pardon by Joey, or to be more accurate, by the auto pen. It wasn't Biden who gave him the pardon. It was an auto pen that gave him a pardon. So, A, I believe the pardon is clearly illegitimate. I believe you can win this in court, but let that go, okay? Let that go. The fact is, it was a full unconditional pardon. Well, now, if it's and remember, the pardon, this is key now, covers everything from January 1st, 2014, and I'll tell you why that date is important. That was specifically picked. All the way until January 20th, 2025, when Biden left the presidency and Trump was inaugurated. So every crime that he committed, every federal offense, in fact, as the pardon says, every federal offense against the United States, whether fully committed by Fauci or he had a role in it, is now fully pardoned. So they couldn't even point that, he wasn't indicted, he wasn't charged, he wasn't convicted. That's what you normally give a pardon for. They're saying blanket, preemptive, full, unconditional pardon, any crime he commits. I've never seen a pardon like this, okay, to be honest. I think the pardon, forget the auto pen, the pardon itself is so blanket, so unconditional, I believe it's an illegitimate pardon. Take it to court, they'll lose. But again, let that one go. The fact is, no matter what he admitted to in that testimony, okay, had he testified truthfully and spoke the truth, they couldn't prosecute him for. He could have said, I shot somebody in the course of the testimony. They couldn't touch him. I murdered somebody. I raped somebody. Whatever. They couldn't touch him. So the question is, why? Why would Fauci make the decision that clearly now has destroyed the image that he tried so hard to craft, along with the media and Democrats, in 3 hours by pleading the fifth over and over and over again? To the point that by invoking the fifth, it's illegal. As Rand Paul openly said, you've been pardoned. The Supreme Court has been crystal clear on this for over 100 years. Once you've been given a pardon, the whole shebang, a pardon, you don't have the rights under the Fifth Amendment against self-incrimination because you can't incriminate yourself. You've been given a pardon. So he now risks contempt of Congress. His actions yesterday now have put him in serious legal jeopardy. He did it. Or under the advice of his lawyers, he did it. Because now by invoking the fifth, now he's opened himself up to serious contempt of Congress charges. They're going to vote on it next week. I believe it's going to pass the Senate panel. And now Trump's DOJ, if they want to arrest him, they've got him. Because obstructing a congressional investigation is a crime. Contempt of Congress is a crime. And he's now potentially going to open himself up to actually going to prison or at a minimum being convicted. So the question is, why did Chicken Little do it? Again, why? I'll tell you why. Because he would have had to say the truth. Because they had the diary. They had the goods. That everything he said in public was a complete lie. He made up the social distancing rule. He knew from the beginning of COVID-19 that this came from a lab in Wuhan. That, in fact, he helped to doctor and manipulate papers saying it came from a wet market, that it came from bats and animals and monkeys, knowing full well that it never did. That he personally oversaw millions of dollars of funding to dangerous gain of function research even though Obama had made it illegal, he nevertheless moved gain-of-function research to China and then secretly funneled taxpayer money by the millions to that infamous lab in Wuhan. That he played a central role in COVID-19, in gain-of-function research that led to countless deaths. And then he spent the rest of his time covering up his crime. And that he was more interested in celebrity and fame, and now we find out, sordid self-enrichment, than he was in keeping people safe. And that would have destroyed completely the myth, the idolatry.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
111 times. Over 100 times. That's all Fauci had to say yesterday. No matter what the question was. On the advice of counsel, he pleads the fifth. 6:20 now on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, let me make just a few more points, and then the lines are blazing already. I want to start going to the phone calls. But just a couple of very quick points. He may escape justice. He may not escape justice. We'll see what happens. Many of you are very cynical, skeptical. You think in the end nothing will come of a contempt of Congress decision, probably most likely by next week, and that he will skate again and not go to jail. We shall see. What is very clear is that the halo is off. He took, not just that he took such a beating yesterday with fact after fact after fact after fact, evidence after evidence after evidence, and he had no answer. All he could do was invoke the fifth, which is essentially he's saying, I'm guilty. Now, he has no right because he had a pardon. So what do you mean, a right against self-incrimination? You can't incriminate yourself. You've been pardoned. So he doesn't have a legal leg to stand on. That's why I believe he will be held in contempt of Congress. I think there's no question. And I think it's going to be held up. And I think he's put himself in serious legal jeopardy. But whatever you stand on the issue, the fact of the matter is, for him to constantly invoke the fifth showed beyond the shadow of a doubt. And this is what the liberals and the Democrats were hoping for, that Saint Fauci would slay the evil Rand Paul, that he would stand up for logic and reason and quote unquote science against the evil Republicans and the MAGA conservatives who are launching, as he put it in his opening statement, a witch hunt against this innocent man. And instead, they got nothing. They got nothing. The cult of Fauci got nothing. Their sun god, their deity, the man that they've been worshiping now for 6 freaking years, when push came to shove to explain what he was writing in private compared to what he said in public, to explain the damning admissions in his own diary that would, they believe, vindicate, that he would come back and say, no, I'm not a fraud. I'm not a liar. I'm not a murderer. No, it's all not true. You're taking everything out of context. He had no answer. He had no answer. And was he arrogant yesterday? No question. I thought shockingly, again, smiling, at times laughing, that stupid smirk, as the cruelty, the horror of everything he had inflicted upon the country was being again detailed in front of him. And you could see this man has no conscience. This man has no remorse. In fact, that was the thing Rand Paul led with. I thought it was brilliant. He said, how about just sorry? Just say you're sorry. Just say, I made mistakes, serious mistakes. But you can't even do that. That's how arrogant you are. That's how full of pride and hubris you are. Honestly, that's how much of a sociopath you are. And so you could see him on the screen over 3 hours get more and more and more diminished. Because now the American people have seen the real Fauci. Now, I know the Democrats tried to prop him up, and the media is doing a desperate spin job, and basically this is their spin in one sentence. That the brave Saint Fauci stood there and weathered the attacks from the evil, non-science, anti-science Republicans, this witch hunt, this evil Republican witch hunt against Saint Fauci, brave Saint Fauci. But that's going to work for the Bills in Sudbury, the Chris's in Gloucester, the hardcore damn communist moonbats. As I said, the cult of Fauci. But for the rest of the American people, it's over. The action figures, the Fauci t-shirts, the Fauci cakes that they bake, putting posters of him on the wall. He is science. It's over. It's over. Because he was showed and exposed yesterday for who and what he truly is, which is a monster and a liar and now a coward. And so let me just say 2 more things, and I want to go right to the phones. 617-266-6868. He had to invoke the Fifth Amendment because if he tried to defend himself, and that's what the lawyers told him, you're going to commit perjury. You're going to perjure yourself under oath. And Rand Paul said before the committee, perjury is not covered by that auto pen pardon. You lie under oath, you're going to go to jail. And his lawyer said, don't do it. Don't do it because you're going to lie. And when you lie, they're going to nail you. And the pardon will not cover you. And the second reason, and this is what ultimately brought him down.
The chairman has denied your assertion of privilege and directed you to answer, but you nonetheless refuse and stand on privilege despite the existence of the pardon. The committee will have to consider after this hearing what appropriate action should be taken against you for the failure to testify after being directed to do so. It's against the law to obstruct an investigation of Congress. There will be repercussions to your refusal to testify today.
From your lips to God's ears, baby. That, of course, was Chairman Senator Rand Paul speaking directly to Chicken Little, or as I now like to call him, Fascist Fauci, because that's what he is and that's what he was, a fascist, to me on the level now clearly of Mengele. No question now. No question after all the evidence that has now come out. 632 on the great WRKO, Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer. Okay, let me set the table, and then I want to go right to the calls. Fauci invoked the Fifth for every question that was asked of him, although he did issue an opening statement. Now, I'm telling you right now, that's another way they're going to get him. He issued an opening statement. Well, if you're pleading the Fifth, you plead the Fifth. No. He wanted to issue a statement attacking Rand Paul and presenting himself as a victim of a witch hunt, but then he takes the Fifth. So he's going to, I'm telling you, he put himself in a lot of trouble yesterday. So bad that even his lawyer got kicked out. Literally, his own top lawyer, and a real scumbag, by the way, okay, protects the worst of the worst. For him to get that kind of a lawyer shows the kind of serious crimes this man has committed. Okay, but, as I say, let that go. So he then pled the Fifth. The whole time, all he did was plead the Fifth. My question to you, did you watch the hearing? What did you make of Fauci's strategy to invoke the fifth? Will it keep him out of jail? And did it damage or shatter his reputation? Not so much with the radical left, the hardcore, as I said, the cult of Fauci, the hardcore Marxist communist Democrats, but in the mainstream of American society. Did the myth of Fauci die at that hearing yesterday? I say yes. I think he will never be seen the same again. And I think deep down he knows it. But that's me. I want to hear from you. 617-266-6868. Rich in Tennessee. You're going to kick us off, Rich. Thanks for holding and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi, Rich.
I have a confession. I turned you off yesterday and turned on Fauci first thing in the morning. And when I heard the opening statement and he verified that it was his diary and he was mad at Rand Paul for releasing it and then went into the fifth, I couldn't believe it.
Now, when you said you couldn't believe it, how do you mean? That he would be that arrogant and contemptuous and invoke the fifth? Or that he's essentially now throwing in the towel because he's now saying, I'm guilty, I'm going to incriminate myself, even though I have a pardon. That's how bad it is because of the diaries. And so basically, I'm throwing in the towel. I'm guilty, guilty, guilty. I'm trying to stay out of jail. When you said you were shocked, in what way?
Well, the fact that he confirmed the diary was his. I felt so good for Bobby Kennedy. I mean,
oh yeah, no, RFK Jr. got him. Oh, he really got him. He got him, and he got him good. Rich, keep going. I'm sorry.
Well, the Democrats they want to put it in the rearview mirror. Yet they bring up January 6th all the time, and this was actually 1 million times worse because there was only one person killed in January 6th, Ashley Babbitt. Millions, and it affected everyone in the country for months and years.
Well, you nailed it, Rich. That's basically what the Democrats were reduced to. They were reduced to two things. Witch hunt, which is not true, and everybody knows it's not true. It's called accountability. He's never been held accountable. He's never had to explain himself. And then, if I want, I can play. I got a stack of clips here. You should see the cuts I have, the cut sheet, Rich. It's one media person after another saying to what you're addressing. Why are we relitigating this now? This was 5-6 years ago. Why are we even bringing this up? And I thought you nailed it. Well, you guys never stopped mentioning January 6th.
All right, we're going to take a quick break then. Dr. Gupta, thank you so much. Just seeing your face this morning, then it takes me back. It breaks my heart. I can't believe we're back here. I can't believe we're relitigating this in the way that we are. I'm grateful that you're here with us today. I'm thankful you were with us for all of those days during COVID. Thank you so much.
There you go. That's Stephanie Rule on MS Now. But I could play you another 100 like this. Why are we relitigating this now? Why? I thought we put it behind us. Because your guy's going down. That's why. The guy that you venerated, that you deified, that you elevated, literally, to like a sun god, who could, say no wrong, do no wrong, knew everything, and was fighting the evil Trump and the evil anti-science Republicans and conspiracy theorists. And it turns out that he was wrong on everything. But more than wrong, Rich, he deliberately lied. And he got rich. And he lined his freaking pockets. And when confronted with death tolls in the thousands and thousands and thousands, he was more interested in partying with Kim Kardashian, literally, and hanging out with the celebrities and the stars than actually doing his freaking job. And that's what was exposed yesterday. And you know, Rich, the expression, once you ring a bell, you can't unring it. That bell was rung. And yeah, he may escape. We'll see. But that bell will never be unrung again. And if liberals and Democrats are truly honest, deep down, they know it. You could tell. Just look at the committee. They tried to initially defend him. And then one Democrat after another, they just left. They'd left him all alone. I mean, I'm not, trying to turn the guy into a martyr. He had 6 lawyers beside him. But they left their guy, they left alone, twisting and swinging in the wind. And then it was, and I got to say, it wasn't just Rand Paul. Rand Paul destroyed him. Ron Johnson destroyed him. Oh, my God, Bernie Moreno, I got to play. When he said, who the F do you think you are? But, the F came out. And you're in deep, I can't say on the, deep excrement, deep crap. The way Bernie Moreno, Josh Hawley, I mean, I've never seen someone dismantled like this. They shredded him. It's like a car. They ran over him, and then they ran over him again. Like, forwards, backwards. I mean, they annihilated the guy. And his only answer was this pathetic whimpering, on the advice of counsel, I plead the fifth. He was destroyed. And everybody knows it. Final word to you, Rich.
It was a good thing to see. There was another chart that they showed of his vaccine. And if you looked at it, the one that has the least side effects right on the top was ivermectin.
He got exposed for everything. You nailed it. Absolutely everything. And the reason why he was downplaying and attacking ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, because he was in the pocket of Big Pharma. And so to get emergency use authorization for the vaccine, and they pointed out how many people died from taking the vaccine, and he knew it. He knew it. It came out he had an adverse side effect. He took the vaccine, and he ended up getting damage to his lungs. RFK Jr. blew the whistle on that. And he had it privately, he had to go and get himself, serious health care. He had to go to a clinic. And then he came back and he lied about it. So he suffered adverse effects from the very jab that he was pushing on the entire population. It was over. I mean, it's just over. They can't debate on the merits anymore. It is over. And I got to say, Rich, you, this entire audience, us, me, Kuhner country, all of us, not 100, 1,000% vindicated. As I said, it was from Howard Cosell when Frazier went down, the famous boxer, down goes Frazier. Like, we thought we would never see this happen. Nobody's going to knock this guy down. Down goes Fauci. That's it. He's been toppled. Douglas in Waltham. Thank you for that call, Rich. Douglas in Waltham. Thanks for holding, Douglas, and welcome.
Okay, yes, Jeff, good morning.
Hi.
Now, my question to you is this. Based upon what happened yesterday, what do you think is the likelihood that 38 states, 3/4 of 50, will go along with repealing the Fifth Amendment? I mean, Fauci wouldn't even say, my tie is whatever, blue. I mean, if that's legal, then to me, the Fifth Amendment's got to go. My question to you is, will 38 states go along with repealing?
No, Douglas, and I don't think they should. Let me be honest with you. He abused the Fifth Amendment. He had no right to invoke the Fifth Amendment. But now he's got a bigger problem coming. Trust me, you want to hear this, Douglas, okay? Because he's so weak now. They can see he's so exposed. Okay, I want to ask all of you, the great audience of Kuhner Country, did you watch yesterday's Senate hearing, or maybe clips of it afterwards? And what did you make of Fauci's decision to plead the fifth to every single question? Every single one, to the point that it got absurd. The color of his tie, he invokes the fifth. I'm not kidding. The color of the carpet on the floor, he invokes the fifth. the day it is. What day is it today? He invokes the fifth. Did that strategy work in your view? Or do you think it made him seem small, pathetic, a liar, and guilty? 617-266-6868. CJ in Boston. Thanks for holding, CJ, and welcome.
Jeff, what Anthony Fauci did yesterday was he gave the middle finger to Congress and to the people of this country. That's what Anthony Fauci did. And I don't think he's going to get any jail time unless they get him for contempt of Congress and throw him right in jail. Anthony Fauci is 85 years old. The average life expectancy of a man in this country is only 79. And by the time that pardon gets to the Supreme Court as to whether or not...
CJ, we lost you. Mike, what happened? Okay, CJ, that was not on our end whatsoever. That was probably you accidentally on the phone or something. Call us back. We're going to put you right back on. Okay, CJ? That did not come from us. Okay, I was going to let CJ make his point because I want to get people on the record because many of you in Kuhner country don't think he will see jail. And so I wanted to get CJ that point across. Okay, now, just very quick. Fauci made, I believe, two fatal mistakes yesterday that are going to land him in serious legal jeopardy, as I was mentioning to Douglas and Waltham. Number one, he invoked the Fifth Amendment and he abused the Fifth Amendment. There's no reason to overturn the Fifth Amendment. He abused the Fifth Amendment because you are not allowed to plead or invoke the Fifth, which is against self-incrimination, if you've already been pardoned. Again, what are you incriminating yourself? You can't. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. He could say I was a Chinese spy, a traitor to America. Nothing can happen. No, I murdered, I got 12 bodies buried in my basement. I'm a mass murderer. It happened between January 1st, 2014 and January 20th, 2025. That's the scale of the preemptive pardon. There's nothing they can do to the guy. I mean, really, because I raped 100 children. I could go on. So what are you don't have a legal leg to stand on the Fifth Amendment. And I'm telling you, he's going to be held in contempt of Congress. And if they want, it's up to Trump's Department of Justice. They're going to vote yes next week. Guaranteed, take it to the bank. So the question then is, will Todd Blanche have the cojones, okay, forgive me, the balls, to finally say, no, we're going to indict this guy. This guy now is going to be indicted. And he's going to be shackled. And he's going to be put in handcuffs. And we're going to perp walk this guy. And finally give this guy the humiliation that he deserves. Now, there is a second opening now. And this is what I was saying about there's a big development. The pardon that Biden gave him, again, it's not Biden, it was the auto pen. So the auto pen pardon is only for federal offenses. In fact, if you want, I can read you the pardon. It specifically says only for federal offenses, because that's all he can pardon. It doesn't mean state offenses. Well, guess what? Now you've got state attorneys general in red state, after yesterday's him invoking the fifth. Him invoking the fifth, this is what it did. It collapsed his entire defense. It's like a massive neon sign. Guilty, 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 guilty. Everybody was a tad hesitant because they're like, again, if you remember Tuesday's show, I kept saying, because I rarely do this, you listen to me because you're busy working. My job is to read the diaries, for example. Like I know some of you do it as well or part of it or whatever, but for the most part, you're like, Jeff, we're working our butts off. We don't have time to go through this guy's 1,100 pages of diaries. That's your job. That's why we listen to you. That's why you're paid, I would say big bucks, but I'm not paid big bucks, but let that go. Okay, so that's why, that's your salary. So earn your salary. The only reason why I kept saying it over and over, I go, this is so stunning. As I said, it beggars belief that anybody would write this and put it down on paper. Well, like, you're crazy. Well, actually, in his case, he was just so arrogant. He's such a megalomaniac. He just thought, no one's ever going to catch me on anything. I'm literally untouchable. So many in the media and even many Republicans were like, nah, I can't believe that what Rand Paul put up is literally Fauci's diaries. That Fauci's going to come in yesterday and say something like, part of it is from an assistant, part of it was, my team, it's not really me, or it's a composite, or something. No, he admitted, my diaries. Well, now, forget, there's blood everywhere now in the water. So now, and he can't stop this, state attorneys general, already Florida State Attorney General says they've opened up now a massive investigation after yesterday, and they say they're going to press charges against Fauci for crimes against humanity, for trying a violation of mass civil liberties. They're going to go on and on. Now, Tommy Tuberville, here it is. I'll play you the cut. Here's Tommy Tuberville, senator from Alabama. He's running for governor of Alabama. Tommy Tuberville says, I'll tell you this, when I win, and I think he obviously will win in November, he goes, when I win, I am directing my state attorney general. We're going to put Fauci in jail. Do you understand? Roll cut. This is Tommy Tuberville on Newsmax. Roll cut 50. Mike.
The gain of function in the Wuhan lab. Now we know that was released from the Wuhan lab. Now, whether it was on purpose or not on purpose, it killed millions of people, and he lied through his teeth. He should be locked up before he leaves this building today and put in prison and then put on trial in front of the American people. We lost 20 to 30,000 people in Alabama alone, and I hope every damn one of them sues this Dr. Fauci, puts him in court. If we can't put him in prison, let's put him in court every day for the rest of his life where he has to be punished and listen to the death that he caused. Again, the vaccine, the death, the lies that he gave to President Trump, and then he took over for Biden, and Biden didn't know what day it was, and so he was free to just run loose across this country and just lie when the truth he knew was totally different than what he was telling. And again, it's embarrassing for what this is the best country on the face of the earth, and we had this fool as the NIAID director. It's just absolutely appalling that he killed people.
Oh, he's completely right. But he then said, I thought it was part of the cut. Trust me, you can look it up. He said, I'm telling you right now, if I win the race in Alabama, and he will, I'm directing my state attorney general to follow Florida's lead. We're gonna go after Fauci. We're gonna go after him. And now you've got red states everywhere. They're now lining up one after another. They're saying, yeah, okay, we're following Florida's lead. We're going to do the same. Now, let me just tell you this. I want to go right back to the phone lines. They're going to have to fight it out in court. Fauci's going to get lawyers, and they're going to say, no, the states can't sue him. He was a federal official, blah, 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 blah. Even if he skates on that, and I don't think he will, but let's just say he does, we're going to take a page now out of the left's playbook. The process is the punishment. And Tommy Tuberville, Senator Tuberville, alluded to it. Even if we can't put him in jail, put him in court every single day for the rest of his life. State after state after state, lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. Everybody and anybody who is affected by this man. The state attorney general will then take your case and we will sue the living daylights. We'll bankrupt him. All that money that he enriched himself, you're going to use it now on lawyers. That's what they do to conservatives. That's their lawfare. Well, now we're going to turn the guns of the left on the left. Now we're going to lawfare this guy, Chicken Little. Tough guy with his big profile in Style magazine. Okay, and on the cover of every major magazine with his stupid Ray-Ban sunglasses. Okay, so we're going to now sue this guy to oblivion. To oblivion. So he's going to be held in contempt of Congress. He's opened himself now to being arrested by the Department of Justice. He's going to have, I'm telling you, dozens of states suing him, and the pardon won't stop. The pardon doesn't stop him or shield him or protect him from state crimes. And this guy now is going to be, and you could see it on his face yesterday. He knew it. The whole thing now had collapsed. When Robert F. Kennedy Jr. got those diaries and dug it out of that server and handed it over to Rand Paul and his committee, game, set, match, it was over. And Rand Paul set him up for a trap. He released the diaries 4 days before the hearing. And he knew full well Chicken Little was going to plead the fifth. And then they were going to get him. They were going to get him. Either they were going to get him, this guy was going to testify, and by testifying, he was going to lie and perjure himself because he can't admit to his crimes because it'll destroy his entire mythology and public image that he's been crafting for the last 5-6 years. Or he's going to do what he did yesterday, which is basically say, I'm guilty, plead the fifth. And now he's in a world of pain. 617-266-6868. Lynn, and by the way, I want to say this. Even then, Rand Paul, I thought, was way too generous. Rand Paul, by the way, people don't know this. He's a practicing Christian. I'm not saying he's a saint. I'm not saying he walks on water. But I'm saying is he and his wife go to church every Sunday. He's a very devout Christian. And so he believes in forgiveness. And that's why he was shaking his head. And he even said to Fauci, he goes, look, just admit you were wrong. Just say you're sorry. And I don't think you'll go to jail. Like, if you would just show some contrition, some humility, just like be a human being for God's sake. He goes, I'm telling you, it's not going to be so bad. But you can't. Because what you saw yesterday, and what I think the mask has really now been lifted, is you saw an arrogant monster, a sociopath. No guilt, no contrition, honestly, no conscience. Lynn in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Lynn. And welcome.
Hi, Jeff. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Of course I can. I'm in my car. I was racing to get somewhere, so I was hoping that I could still go to my gym and talk to you. I saw it yesterday. You called him a monster, and that's exactly what I put on Facebook last night. When I heard that he took baby parts from fetuses and injected them into mice for COVID, that flipped me out because I'm an infertility. I worked in infertility, as you know. But it was just incredible. And taking the fifth, I didn't think he could do that after being pardoned, and you are correct, he can't. So, one of my pieces, if you remember, when I was in high school, I heard the term germ warfare in history. And I never thought in my life I would see something like this. When those people, if you remember, he wouldn't turn around to look at the people. It was incredible. And I said, why don't those people go around in front of him to look at him? He couldn't even look at the people he's hurt. You can go on and on and on, people that didn't see families in hospitals. We can just say everything. He is a monster. I've been in science before, and I'm still in somewhat science, and I just can't believe it. We're all a bunch of guinea pigs, and of all the experiments he did between the beagles, doing the poor orphans, the black babies, with injecting HIV. I was in the lab in the 80s when HIV started, and we were afraid to even touch people. It was awful. He's just a monster.
Lynn, you're completely, as I like to say, not 100, you're 1,000% correct. But Lynn, let me be brutally honest with you like I'm in the confessional. I read Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s book on Fauci. It's a brilliant book. I urge, if you haven't bought it and you haven't read it, I'm urging you to buy it and read it. And everything in it turns out to be 1,000% now completely. I knew at the time it was true because it's got so much evidence in it. But now with the diaries and all the rest that's come out, 1,000% vindicated. Okay. RFK Jr. nailed this guy to a T. But there's a part in the book, you touch on it, the experiments on those poor dogs, how he tortured them in the most horrific way imaginable. But the part, Lynn, and I wish I hadn't done this, okay, I'm in the confessional now. When he talked about the black orphaned babies, and JFK's got some really very powerful stuff on that, and how Fauci deliberately injected them with HIV, with AIDS, and then with all kinds of experimental treatments, and what it did to the babies, I don't even want to describe it to you. I didn't believe RFK. I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't believe him. In the book, I'm reading the book, I'm like, he's got to be exaggerating. He's over-dramatizing to try to make his case against Fauci. Not in America. Because like you, Lynn, to me, Holocaust, never again. I grew up on that. You don't go down the road of a Mengele. We don't do that in America. We don't experiment on humans. My God, never mind on poor black babies. And we don't do this kind of, dangerous biological gain of function research, germ warfare. We don't do that in this country. It's barbaric. It's inhumane. It's beyond all the norms of civilization. And so I looked it up. I went on the internet. And of course, it's extremely well documented. It's so documented. This man was so arrogant, like Mengele, like many of the Nazis, to be honest, and the communists. He filmed himself. There are films. Okay, then it was videotape then, but films of him with the babies in the laboratories. And you see what's happening to the babies. God is my witness. I can't, to this day, this was years ago. I bought the book, I read the book, and then I did my own investigation, my own research. Lynn, I swear to you, I can't get those babies out of my mind. I can't. I can't. Maybe I adopted two young children, two babies, and maybe it's the adoption, maybe it's my own children. I don't know. I don't know. Okay? I don't know. But I'm going to be very honest with you. That's a monster. That's a monster. And how liberals can still defend him. And they claim to be for diversity, and they claim to be for minorities, and they claim, all the lies they peddle. How you can defend this man? I don't know how someone like Bill in Sudbury wakes up in the morning, or Chris in Gloucester, and looks at himself in the mirror. These were crimes against humanity. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. And so, a lot of people are saying, well, Jeff, he's 85. Even if you do put him in jail, what's the point? I don't care if he spends one day in jail. To me, that's not the issue. The issue is he must be held accountable in the eyes of the world and in the eyes of history for the crimes that this monster inflicted going back 50 years. And it only got worse and worse because, Lynn, let me tell you, this is the story of COVID. I'm going to go to you, give you the last word. He went from experimenting on babies and experimenting cruelly on dogs to experimenting on all of us. Final word to you, Lynn.
Yep, you said the exact thing. Jeff, I used to do some experiments, and it was on laboratory animals, but I became an anti-vivisectionist, and that's someone that did not like what she saw, did not like what they did to dogs and different things. Some experiments, you have to do some I can't even say the word, but you know what I mean. But
experimentation, yeah, you have to do. I understand, but we're not talking rats or guinea pigs. You're talking dogs, and now we're talking people, for God's sake. But anyway, keep going, Lynn.
Exactly. Yeah. So we watched on Newsmax last night because I wanted to see the woman that knew hand gestures, the things he was doing and what was going through his system. And he was, when he started itching his face, she said his cortisol level was spiking in his body.
Oh, yeah, no, you could see on his face. At times he was white as a sheet. No. You could see in his eyes. By the way, he's got very dead eyes. Okay, you can text the Kuhner Man 70470, 70470. This is from 617. Jeff, watching fascist Fauci yesterday, his effect and projection of arrogance reminded me of the look of Hermann Goering during the Nuremberg trials. I completely agree. I kept looking at this and I'm like, this is unbelievable how much he reminds me of those Nazis that were held on trial during, at Nuremberg after World War II. The eyes, the face, the smirk, the smile, the coldness, the arrogance, the lack of conscience, just the evil, but also how this faceless bureaucrat, like so many of those Nazis that were on trial, you look at them and you go, my God, there's nothing that stands out about them. You would think these mass murderers would, I don't know, there's that, they would be like these larger than life personalities or, you think, well, my God, if you're going to kill that many people, it's got to be the devil. They have to look, they're like almost like the personification of evil. Almost like, I don't know, like, ah, ha, 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 like a sinister laugh or, and instead you just look at them and you're like, they're just a bunch of faceless, cold, arrogant, presumptuous bureaucrats. And they kill without blinking an eye. No remorse, no, no conscience, nothing whatsoever. No remorse whatsoever. That was Fauci. Alex in Cambridge. Thanks for holding, Alex, and welcome.
First, I'd like to say I was a physician during this whole time. And when we were watching this happen, we really did not know how to treat COVID, okay? It started off in Wuhan, and they probably shut down the whole city, okay? What I would like to say is that this whole thing is our equivalent of the Cultural Revolution in China, where they killed everybody who said anything wrong, or they shut them up, or they censored, okay? Fauci is only the face of this. And if we allow the Democrats and the DSA to come back into power, all they have to do is shut down the history of it. I mean, do we know anything about 1989? Do we know anything about the Cultural Revolution? No, because China knows how to shut it down. So we need the SAVE Act. But the point is that as a physician during COVID, nobody really knew how to take care of it. And it came out of Wuhan, all right? I have to admit, I took the shot just because I had to take the shot. Otherwise, I would have been fired. Okay? And if you chose not to take a shot, that was your choice. But from a medical standpoint, we knew that it was the flu. And we knew that flu shots in the past was only 40 to 60% effective. So when they developed the flu shot, the vaccine, as it turned out, it wasn't that effective eventually. And then they kept on new strains every time because, you kill off one strain, then the next strain takes over. From a science standpoint, we did know that the first virus was the most deadly one. And that's what killed off all the people in Wuhan. We still don't know what happened in Wuhan. They probably locked down all the apartments. They have dead people in Wuhan, for all I know.
Alex, Alex, by the way, you're on fire, by the way. You're absolutely nailing it. Alex, I got to ask you this question. You're right. Fauci was just the face of the COVID response. There were so many other people who were implicated as well, no question. Why did so many in the medical professionals, why did so many of them, doctors, nurses, why did they go along with the vaccine mandates, with the mask mandates, with the social distancing, with the all of the insane policies? And they knew that they weren't working. They knew we were being lied to. Why did so many help perpetuate these lies that were being peddled by Fauci, by the CDC, by the the National Institutes of Health? Why were so many medical professionals involved and implicated in this? What's your theory?
Two answers. One is, we were not allowed to, okay? We were censored, and number two is money, okay? Everybody gets money. Pharma gets money. How much money is pharma? Okay? Those are the two things. Everybody's paid off or you're censored. You're fired.
Alex, were doctors being paid to promote the jab, to promote the shot?
I don't know, okay? I was not that part of it, okay? But the point is that, I'm sure they were. I don't know. But there were a lot of the pharmacies paid a lot of doctors to go out to dinners, golf trips, plane fares, trips. But that's the paying. But that's been happening since 2007, 2008. Doctors were paid to support Obamacare.
Interesting. Alex, thank you very, very much for that call. Really good call. He's right, by the way. He's completely right. Doctors were in on it. Nurses were in on it. The entire healthcare bureaucracy was in on it. And a lot of it was money. They were essentially bribed. And I know for a fact, doctors were told the more jabs you give out, the more money you make. They had a direct financial incentive to put that into the arms of as many of their patients as possible. And many of them knew there were adverse effects, adverse consequences. And they did it anyway. This is sick from top to bottom. So, the question now is someone going to ever be held accountable? And what we saw yesterday, with Fauci pleading the fifth over 100 times. The man is a fraud. The man is a liar. And the man is a mass murderer. And now he's trying to stay out of jail. And I'm telling you, he committed contempt of Congress. That there's no question. And he had no right to invoke the fifth. Okay, I want to ask you. It's the Kuhner Country poll question of the day, sponsored by Mario's. Mario's Quality Roofing, Siding, and Windows. Do you think Chicken Little, i.e. Tony Fauci, or as I like to call him now, Fascist Fauci, because that's what he was and that's what he is. Do you think Fascist Fauci would have taken the fifth yesterday if he had not been caught lying in his diaries? In other words, was it the diaries and the fact that Rand Paul released them over the weekend. 1,100 pages. Bombshell, bombshell, bombshell. Revelation after revelation after revelation. Is that what forced, if you want to use the word forced, from his lawyers, Fauci to invoke the fifth? A, yes. B, no. He would have done it no matter what. I want to hear from you. You can vote on our webpage, wrko.com/Kuhner, wrko.com/Kuhner. You can also vote via X, my handle there, all one word, at the Kuhner Report, at the Kuhner Report, Kuhn as in national ER. Very quickly, because the lines are screaming. I want to play to you. This is very important because here's another angle. Fauci has opened himself up to so much legal jeopardy, it's not even funny. I want you to listen now to this. This was his opening statement. And he's trying to do two things. He's trying to claim that he's innocent. He's trying to portray Rand Paul as being sort of unhinged and just obsessed with him, like this is a witch hunt. And then he's trying to explain to his defenders, the cult of Fauci, well, this is why I'm taking the fifth. You wanted me to have a battle royale with Rand Paul and put him in his place, where I finally slay the evil Rand Paul, me, Saint Fauci? Well, I can't, and here's why. So it's an attack on Rand Paul. He's trying to claim innocence, and he's trying to justify why he's going to plead the fifth. Roll cut 1B, Mike.
Given Senator Paul's obvious obsession with calling for my prosecution, his repeated slanderous comments about me, and recently his publicly releasing my unredacted personal diary aimed at embarrassing and intimidating me, the only conclusion I can reach is that the sole reason he is calling me before this committee is to get me to say something, anything, that could vindicate his repeated public pledges that I end up, in his words, quote, behind bars, unquote.
So I'm the victim of a witch hunt. I'm innocent. But he's so stupid, or he's so arrogant. He's like, well, look, yeah, that's my diary. Unredacted. Yeah, that's me. That's my diary. And he even says it's humiliating. It's embarrassing. So where's the slander? What, truth is slander now? And if your diary is so magnificent, why don't you defend it? Because here's what it comes down to. If you're an innocent man, as you claim, you're just a, quote, scientist, what are you pleading the fifth for? What have you got to hide? I'm telling you, I have nothing to hide. If I was called as a witness in front of any congressional committee, why would I ever plead the fifth? I've got nothing to hide. I've never committed a crime. I can defend to you every major decision I've made in my life. I'm not trying to brag. I'm sure most of you are the same. Well, what's the problem? I didn't do anything wrong. Now, here it comes. Why he's got to plead the fifth. Roll cut 1C, Mike.
Any reasonable person who has followed his unhinged obsession with me would readily come to the same conclusion. Therefore, although it pains me to do so, because of the respect I have for the legislative branch of government and my decades-long record of cooperating with Congress, under the advice of my attorneys, I will invoke my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution to refrain from answering your questions. Thank you.
You little weasel. Yeah, as he's stonewalling Congress, as he's stonewalling the investigation and trying to desperately cover up his crimes, out of respect for you. You phony, you fraud, you. I swear, this guy. you know? Yeah, Rand Paul's obsession with me. Well, actually, you're a mass murderer. That's what you are. You're a liar, a fraud, and a mass murderer. That's like saying, oh, my God, those prosecutors at Nuremberg. What is it with you guys and going after all these Nazis, all these war criminals for crimes against humanity? Hey, it's an unhinged obsession. What the hell's wrong with you guys? This is from 508. Now, this is because I'm telling you, that's another mistake that Fauci made because of his ego, because of his megalomania, his narcissism. Jeff, 508, you can text us 70470. Jeff, there is a further point for which Fauci should be held in contempt of Congress. When a witness is called before a congressional committee, one may not profess one's innocence as the prelude to taking the Fifth Amendment, regardless of a preemptive pardon or immunity or plea deal. And Fauci did precisely this. Lois Lerner did this as well while covering her and Obama's rear ends for the IRS persecution of the Tea Party and Tea Party affiliated nonprofits. But of course, the Obama Injustice Department under Eric Holder did nothing, and their leftist courts concurred. Now, the larger point that 508 is making is completely right. If Todd Blanche, the acting AG, he wants to get Fauci, he can get him on this alone. When you're subpoenaed, and he was subpoenaed, remember, he didn't want to testify, and you're called before a congressional committee, if you're going to take the Fifth, you can't deliver a preliminary statement saying, no, I'm innocent, and you guys are engaging in a witch hunt, and I'm a victim, and blah, 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 and then say, oh, no, now I refuse to answer all questions. Rand Paul even said it to him. He said, hey, be careful. If you're going to make a statement, you better not plead the Fifth. He kept on going. Fauci just kept on going. So what I'm saying is, not only is he in very serious legal jeopardy, it's like he's opened up multiple fronts for them now to go after him. Tom in Hudson. And by the way, final thing. And this is what the public saw very clear. That's why I'm telling you the halo is off. So your statement is saying, I'm innocent. I'm the victim of a witch hunt. They're out to get me, to put me behind bars just for the hell of it. I'm a political target. I'm Saint Fauci. And, Rand Paul is leading the reactionary mob against me. Then why are you pleading the Fifth? Let me ask all of you. If they were coming after you and you were innocent, would you plead the Fifth? Would you refuse to answer every and all questions? Or would you stand there and defend yourself and defend your decisions and defend what you did? So by him doing this, honestly, I think it backfired from a PR point of view. It made him look even more guilty, more craven, more of a monster. Tom in Hudson. Thanks for holding, Tom, and welcome.
Jeff, good morning.
Hi.
I had 2 points, but you already covered one about the states going after them. But another point is, when I was in the service, we issued government credit cards, and if we didn't spend the money properly, we had to reimburse the government. Now, my question to you is, did Congress approve the money spent for the labs that he had overseas?
No.
If not, then he should be able to go after him financially to reimburse the government.
Brilliant.
And the other point I'd like to make is when I was watching him a little bit on TV, he was shaking a lot. So either he was very nervous or to me it looked like he was ill. I don't know if you've seen the paper he was holding it, but it was going back and forth a little bit, a couple of inches.
Well, Tom, I can tell you this. Journalists in the room who were friends of mine, they were texting me throughout, and then they texted me afterwards, and we spoke. They said he was shaking as a leaf, that he was white as a ghost, and they said, Jeff, You could see the anxiety and stress oozing out of his ears, his eyes, and his nose. And they said, Jeff, I'm telling you, he's guilty of sin, and he knows he's guilty of sin. Cleaning up the Fauci Bowl. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, very quick, because I want to go back to the phones. I thought one of the most pivotal and frankly dramatic moments yesterday was the clash between Ohio Senator Bernie Moreno. I love Bernie Moreno. He is a staunch MAGA conservative. He's America first all the way. His parents came from Colombia. He's a Latino, a proud Latino conservative, and a successful businessman, by the way, before he entered politics. And he laid out how it was COVID and the tyrannical, draconian, authoritarian response, the school closures, the church closings, the lockdowns, the shuttering of all of these businesses, the vaccine mandates, the mask mandates, everything, the greatest violation of civil liberties in the history of the United States, the unnecessary deaths, people, grandparents, family, loved ones dying alone in hospitals, millions of Americans losing their livelihoods, their professions, their jobs, on and on. And then Bernie Moreno Senator Moreno confronted Chicken Little, Fauci. And he said there was one incident in particular. It was like the straw that broke the camel's back. That said, I've got to run for the Senate. I've got to run for office. I've got to make sure this never happens again. And that was of a mother who forced to be in her home because of the lockdowns imposed by Fauci and other governors around the whole country, and of course by the Biden regime, went with her husband and her 2 children. So they lived together, and they just couldn't stand being cooped up in the house over and over all day, all week. And so they went to a corner of a stadium all by themselves, 30 feet away from anybody else. And of course, they weren't wearing a mask. Why would you need to wear a mask? You're outside. You're 30 feet away from anybody else. You're with your husband. You're with your 2 children. What are you wearing a mask for? And as they were watching the game, minding their own business, the police came and arrested the mother and the family because they weren't wearing a mask outside in the stands in the corner away from everybody else at a football game. And he looked at Rand Paul and said, do you realize what you unleashed on our country? Mothers were being arrested for the most insane, unscientific, ludicrous reasons imaginable. This is what you did to us. Could you at least say sorry? I was wrong. We were overzealous. We made mistakes. This was complete overkill. And I want you to listen now to the exchange between Moreno and Fauci. Roll cut 11, Mike.
Well, let me tell you who David Schertler is for the audience, because he was ejected by the chairman. He's a high-profile criminal attorney. He's represented some really great people, like Senator Bob Menendez. Maybe that's somebody who my Democrat colleagues may remember took gold bars as bribes from the Egyptians. And there's an article here in the Washington Free Beacon that talks about why you would hire a guy like David Schertler. And the comment is, if you're in deep, that's who you call. Do you feel like you're in deep?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Okay, now that was just before. That was where Marino says, because there was a lawyer. His lawyer was kicked out. Fauci's lawyer at the very beginning, because Fauci's trying to claim the Fifth, but his lawyer is trying to testify on his behalf, which no court would ever allow. Okay, it's illegal. So Fauci said, get the hell out of here. But Marino points out, well, you want to know who this guy's lawyer was that got kicked out? This is the guy that defends crooks like Bob Menendez. By the way, he defends drug dealers. He defends the Mexican drug cartels. He defends drug traffickers. He's a $3,000 an hour sleazebag defense lawyer. As he put it, if you're in deep, I can't say it, okay, if you're in deep crap, in other words, you're up to your, eyeballs in crimes, you're guilty of sin, this is the scumbag you hire. So he's basically saying, he's dressing Fauci down, for you to hire this guy, you think you're in deep, he said it. I mean, you think you're in deep crap? Excrement? You think so? Huh? And then he went for this. Roll cut 12. Mike.
Those policies were put in place because you had moronic politicians that listened to the words of a megalomaniac who was more interested in having met a Kardashian than the suffering of the American people. And that is you. Your advice to communities like that, to idiotic politicians who enforce those rules, arrested that mom for watching a football game with her own family outside. When that story broke, I said to myself, I cannot stand idly on the side and watch this happen. It was about 6 years ago today that I decided I'm going to give up my businesses, sell them all, run for office, run for the United States Senate. Here I am sitting in front of you 6 years later saying, who the do you think you were for doing that? It is a total disgrace what you did to this country.
Mike, can you play that last bit of the who the blank? I can't say it on the air. I'm going to get fined. I found it hilarious that Fox, I was watching it on Fox, but all the cable channels that let that F-bomb fly. Me, if I said an F-bomb, it's a $2-3 million fine. But you can say it on all these cable news channels. But just do the who the blank do you think you are? Fauci had this whoa, look, nobody talks to me this way. The only thing missing, it was perfect. I'm telling you, he hit him so hard. It was a perfect shot. The only thing this is a Kuhnerism, that I would have added to Senator Marino. I would have said, and you know what? F you.
6 years later, saying, who the do you think you were for doing that?
F you. Go blank yourself. Go F yourself. You piece of you-know-what. Order. I can see Rand Paul. Senator Kuhner, come on now. I'm pissed. I'm sorry. I'm speaking for the whole country. Go F yourself. Jeff in Chelsea. Thanks for holding, Jeff, and welcome.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Well, as far as Fauci is concerned, yes, we all know that Fauci's getting his, but the horse is out of the barn. The Homer Simpsons have already taken the vaccine in their arms. The normies have already done it. And you see, outside of Kuhner country, we make up a small minority, whereas Normie makes up the majority, and he ran the show, and that's why we got screwed. Because Normie went right along with the vaccines, went right along with the mask mandates. A lot of your managers are normies, and they fired people because you have to take the vaccine in order to keep your job. So the real blame is on the silent majority that doesn't even listen to your program. That's what you're dealing with here. We're outnumbered, and we're outfinanced. That's what you're dealing with. So that's why we are in the pickle that we're in. This is how communism comes into a country, and fascism is because Normie allows it to keep his job, to make his money, and retire in peace. That's what you're dealing with here.
Well, Jeff, look, I have to say this. I'll never forget COVID till the day I die. And in particular was the response to COVID that I'll never forget. And that the majority of the American people allowed their most fundamental rights and liberties to be violated, abrogated, suspended. And how so many of them, like sheep, blindly followed everything the corrupt medical establishment and the corrupt political establishment told them. You know, Senator Marino was 1,000% correct. He said it was you and these idiot politicians. And you guys were arresting mothers outside at a football game in the stands, 30 feet away from any human being. You closed down schools that has affected a generation of children irreparably. You violated our religious freedoms and shut down churches. You literally closed hundreds of thousands of small businesses, bars, restaurants, anything under the sun, some of them multi-generational. And people lost everything. You pushed a jab that you knew, in fact, you yourself personally suffered from. You knew wasn't safe. You knew had adverse effects. In fact, you knew it was giving people myocarditis. It was causing heart attacks. It was causing blood clots in some people. It caused pulmonary damage to Fauci himself. Women couldn't get pregnant. Their menstrual cycle has now been permanently disrupted. They can't have children. And on it went. People lost their jobs. It was the jab or your job. Look, Jeff, I was up against it. This was under Biden. It was just before the Supreme Court saved us, where Joe Biden imposed a mandate at the behest of Chicken Little, Fauci, that all major corporations, I think it was 500 plus employees. Don't quote me on the number, but iHeart was, that I worked for, iHeart, was under that mandate that either you take the vaccine or you must be fired. And I remember saying to myself, I'm never going to take that vaccine, that jab. So what? I'm going to lose my job? I'm going to lose the show? Do you know how hard I worked to get here? How many years of sacrifice, blood, sweat, toil, and how many years? I mean, I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm not patting myself on the back, but you know how hard it is to keep a top caliber, highly rated show on the air with the ratings that this show has for as long as we've done it? You know the kind of work and sacrifice it takes? And you're going to destroy it because I don't want to put an experimental mRNA technology, and that's what it was. It was experimental mRNA gene therapy into my arm. My body, my choice. I couldn't sleep for days. I'm telling you, my stomach was horrible. Because part of you says, your mind plays tricks. Well, just take it. Take it and you won't have to lose everything. And then the other part of you says, whatever you do, don't take it. A, you don't put that poison in your body. B, you never let the government violate your body. It's a matter of principle. How are you going to look your children in the eyes? How are you going to look your wife in the eyes? Now, I made a decision no matter what. I was not going to take it. But I honestly thought the show was gone. I thought my career was over. And then by the grace of God, thank you, Jesus, the Supreme Court came in and said it's completely unconstitutional. But this was all Chicken Little. Look, Jeff, again, let me be brutally honest with you, like I'm in a confessional. This I'll never forget till the day I die. I come down with COVID. I go to see my local, primary care doctor. I used to always trust my primary care doctor. I revere doctors. I revere nurses. I'm telling you, really, I'm a hypochondriac. I love doctors and nurses. I think they're they do some of the most important jobs in the world. I come in and I see I go into my primary care's physician office. I've tested positive now for COVID. I feel horrible. And I said, I'd like to see my primary care physician. And the two nurses told me to my face, I'm sorry, sir. We follow Fauci's protocol. Fauci's protocol. You have to go to a hospital. We will not treat you. I said, you mean I can't get ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine or a steroid or no. You have to go to the hospital, check yourself in. They will then give you remdesivir, which is what Fauci was peddling. And she said, most likely, they're going to have to put you on a ventilator because remdesivir attacks the organs. It's the worst thing to give. But Fauci had a financial stake, so he was pushing remdesivir. And then she said, you're going to be put on a ventilator. Now, what she didn't tell me, but I knew, is that once they put you on a ventilator, when I say Russian roulette, it's you literally, you have the gun, you spin the chamber, you put it up to your temple and press and pull the trigger and pray you don't get your brains blown out. Because once they put you on a ventilator, it's 50-50 that you survive. And at that very moment, I can't tell you this black, what I mean by black, like my mind went dark. My stomach, I thought I was going to throw up. This nauseous, sickening feeling came over my entire body. Like, when you're about to experience death, or, like when you have like a very serious accident or something that happens where you think, oh my God, I almost died. I realized at that moment, I said, if you listen to your doctor, if you listen to the nurses that you in the past always trusted because of this SOB, I'm going to die. In fact, what came to my mind was, I'm going to be another of Fauci's statistics. I want to end up just a statistic, dead. And my wife will be grieving and my children will be grieving. And nothing will happen. No justice will be done. He just died. He had COVID and the treatment killed him. Not COVID, the treatment. And I couldn't believe it. And I got in my car, sick as I was, and I went back home. And I said, I'm not going to a hospital. And I made Grace promise. I said, you have to promise me, no matter what, you don't send me to that hospital. Because the moment they put in remdesivir in me, my organs are going to crash. And then I'm on a ventilator. And then I'm a dead man. And I said, I got many more years left in front of me. And that's when she called a nurse who's a good friend of ours. And she came and she gave me, I know I've said this story many times, but it bears repeating. First of all, she said, you're not going to die. Because I kept coughing and coughing. And I said, can I cough myself to death? Because, your things are running through your mind. They're terrorizing you on TV. Fauci's terrorizing and traumatizing the whole country. She says, it's never happened that someone has coughed themselves to death. And that right away made me feel much better. It brought the anxiety down. And then she said, listen, I've been curing so many patients. She was a nurse. She was a very good nurse. Ivermectin. She goes, take this tablet. I took the tablet. Within 3 to 4 hours, I felt noticeably better. And then they gave me a phone number. And these were the doctors that were going against Fauci, and Fauci was trying to destroy their careers. But they all proved to be right. And she was based in Iowa. And I called her and I spoke to her. And she said, no, you need ivermectin right away, but because of my weight, my height, she didn't give you enough. Let me give you the proper dose. And so she sent the ivermectin. I got it. I started to take the proper dose a couple times a day. And Jeff, I swear to you, within 48 hours, I was a new man. I wasn't coughing. My fever went down. It was gone. I mean, I can't tell you. I was like COVID was basically over. I needed a few more days afterwards to recuperate, but essentially by 2 days, it was over. And so what I realized, we could have solved this so easily. Everybody get a home test kit. So if you're feeling sick, do you have COVID? Yes. And then either use ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine. And that's it. And Senator Ron Johnson, to his eternal credit, yesterday, I'll play you the cut if you want, and he had a stack of studies saying at the time, not now, there's even more studies. I'm talking from Harvard, from Oxford, from Cambridge, from Stanford, from Vanderbilt, from Michigan, never mind from Germany, Sweden, France, Australia. 106 studies. 106 studies that ivermectin reduces mortality regarding COVID, reduces the symptoms or almost gets rid of the symptoms, reduces hospitalizations 60 to 70 to 80%, depending on your age, your comorbidities, et cetera, et cetera. In other words, it worked. And he said, and to Fauci, as he pointed to him, he said, you went on television and said again and again, it's horse dewormer. It's a Nobel Prize winning medication. Nobel Prize. And he showed the stack. And he said, this was the evidence. And you said there was no evidence. Do you know how many people unnecessarily died because of that monster? Because ivermectin, there's no money in it for Big Pharma. It's pennies on the pill. But the jab, the shot, that's big money.
I've got the studies right here. There was a website that was tracking the random controlled studies. Here they are, showing 60, 70% efficacy of ivermectin. The same day you say there's no evidence, there was all kinds of evidence. Loved ones had to go to hospitals, had to sue hospitals. Just, would you try it? So I would want to know, to what extent were you involved in sabotaging hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, and did you do that because you knew the only way you get an emergency use authorization for these drugs, these experimental gene therapy, was if there was no effective treatment, you couldn't get the emergency use authorization. So is that why you helped sabotage these cheap generic drugs in favor of remdesivir, which, by the way, nurses, are you aware of the fact that nurses called it run, death is near?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment.
Scumbag. Absolute scumbag. No, that's exactly why they had to sabotage ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. That's the only way to get emergency use authorization for them to roll out the jabs. So they had to lie about ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. I mean, the whole thing, it was a racket for Fauci to line his pockets and for Big Pharma to line their pockets. 821 on the great WRKO, Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer. And because of this, hundreds of thousands of Americans, just Americans, unnecessarily and needlessly died. The man, Fauci, is a mass murderer. Besides being a liar and a fraud, he's a mass murderer. And yesterday, you can't unring that bell. No one will ever see him the same again. Because what they saw wasn't the media image anymore, but the real monster. A sick sociopath who did everything in his power to lie to us, because what he was about his own power, his own self-enrichment, and his own celebrity and fame. 617-266-6868. 617-266-6868 is the number. I got to say this. Look, I know, to me, I want Fauci behind bars. Don't get me wrong. He's got to pay. He was the face of COVID. He was clearly the focal point for all of this, going all the way back into that's why, by the way, the pardon goes, it's, retroactive to January 1st, 2014, because it was in 2014 that Fauci began to aggressively fund gain of function research. First here in the United States, and then when the Obama administration said, what are you guys, crazy? What if this thing gets out of a lab? Like what would happen, like what happened in Wuhan? Like later. He goes, what are you, nuts? Right next to a big American city? What do you want? Millions of Americans dead? No. And so they banned it. Well, then what did Chicken Little do? He then collaborated with other, fellow like-minded so-called scientists, and they moved gain of function to communist China. And that's where they teamed up with the infamous lab in Wuhan, the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And that's when he began to funnel millions, and I mean millions of dollars, taxpayer money, illegally. Congress never spent money on gain of function research. So he took money that he claimed was going to be used for other things, and then through secret back channels, and this is the key, a middleman, and that was EcoHealth Alliance. And that's how the mob works. That's how you use a front company or a middle person. So, it's a kind of like, quote, launder the money, hide the money. So the money went to EcoHealth Alliance and this person who ran it, Peter Daszak. And they then sent the money to this infamous Wuhan Institute. And that's where they did extremely dangerous gain of function research, especially on coronaviruses. So, and Fauci knew immediately. That's why the diary was so damning. That's why the moment Rand Paul released it, Fauci was his goose was cooked. He was in big trouble. Because in the diary, the idiot Fauci admits early on, no, it came from the lab in Wuhan. As he's telling people, in fact, forcing people to write scientific papers that claim it came from natural origins. I.e., a bat, a monkey, an animal, the so-called wet market. So he's getting papers written illegally by bribing them with big money to falsely claim that it came from a wet market when he's admitting it private. A, I funded it. B, it came from the lab. Meaning I caused it, or I was partially responsible for causing it. But it began in 2014. That's why the pardon was rolled back to January 1st, 2014. Now, I want to read this. I want to go right back to the phones. It's from 603, again, up in New Hampshire. You can text the Kuhner Man, 70470. And this is so true. Please, if you can, really pay attention to every word. Because he tattoos Fauci. Or whatever. The texter tattoos Fauci. Jeff, something I've recognized by watching Fauci over the years is the fact that, in my opinion, he exhibits every trait and psychological marker of a full-blown sociopath. The lifeless, cold gaze that lacks normal human emotion is just the surface tell. His demeanor and track record are the real giveaway. Sociopaths lack the ability to feel empathy for others. The part of the brain responsible for sympathetic response is utterly inactive. This has been shown on brain scans. Next, you look at the man's body of work as a scientist, quote unquote, and the heinous practices and experiments he has conducted without any care or remorse for the untold harm he has caused. This is another marker. Finally, his penchant for self-gratification and quote-unquote esteem of self is another dead giveaway. Sociopaths are highly inclined to lionize themselves and find it excruciatingly difficult, almost impossible, to ever admit fault or feel regret over their actions. I have always said, not all narcissists are sociopaths, but all sociopaths are narcissists. And Anthony Fauci is the poster child of sociopaths / borderline psychopaths. Nailed him to a T. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. The cold gaze. The lack of any remorse. Any conscience whatsoever. Any empathy. Any feeling. The need for constant validation. The narcissism. The fame. The celebrity. It's like a black hole. He can never get enough. In fact, his obsession with it and his inability, psychological inability to ever admit that he's wrong or ever admit fault. Many of you are saying this. You're texting it and messaging it to me, and I agree. When he's dead, I'm not joking, I'd like for science to look at his brain. Look at his brain. Study his brain. Because I think it will be Exhibit A, really the embodiment of a true, pure sociopath. And my God, that was the quote-unquote expert, the man, the so-called science, that the whole political and health and medical establishment relied on. You never give so much power to one man. And this is exactly why. 617-266-6868. Agree, disagree. John in Dunstable. Thanks for holding, John, and welcome.
Hi, Jeff. Thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure, John.
This is quite a disturbing when you hear all the facts, Jeff, of what this scum did. Fauci helped develop this biological weapon with the Chikongs, correct, Jeff?
Oh, no question.
All right. For what reason, Jeff? The reason he developed it was to commit mass murder. So he did this knowing what it was being built for. This wasn't science, Jeff. This was a weapon to commit mass murder. Okay. Now he not only did this against the United States of America, he did it against the world, Jeff. He was involved. I would bet you anything, Jeff, that he had this released purposely, knowing full fact what that weapon would do to the people. Okay? He did it. If you think back, Jeff, because we discussed it, well, his love letters to Clinton, he did this for the Communist Party that is staked in our country. That's why he did this, Jeff. And Pete Hegseth should arrest him for war crimes. If you add up the people that died, Jeff, just in America because of this, it's more people than all the wars that we've had in this country. And no pardon can stop the military from arresting him for war crimes. And you know what's surprising me too, Jeff? No other country, which every country had the death effects from this COVID, no other country is asking for his head. And that's pretty sad, Jeff, that this scumbag, he's 85.
Let me just tell you this, and I may have to hold you over because we're up against it, but just so that you know, when you read his diary, again, and this is what I say, it's shocking. He admits several things. He admits that he's very close friends with all of these journalists and media people, Jake Tapper, but so many others, and that they're all carrying water for him. That they're all just, whatever he says, they're just mindlessly repeating. But he admits that they're on a mission, and the mission is to defeat and bring down Trump in November. He admits this. It's not journalism, it's propaganda. It's not science, it's a political coup. And so one of the key reasons why the virus was released was to create panic in the United States, which Fauci then used, weaponized, to push the lockdowns, the shutdowns, which tanked the economy, and Trump had a roaring economy. Okay, so just very, very quickly, what you clearly see when you look at Fauci's career, and it's laid out in the diaries, he even admits it, a long relationship with Communist China, a long relationship in particular with the Chinese Communist Party. They had a relationship that went back a decade at least, and a lot of money was flowing, taxpayer money, through Fauci and the National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Diseases, which is what he ran, and they sent it to that infamous lab in Wuhan. And by the way, Fauci was a massive admirer of that crazy scientist who ran that infamous dangerous lab in Wuhan. And so he had a lot of admiration for Communist China because, according to him, the Communist Chinese aren't afraid to do gain-of-function research. They're not afraid to do these super viruses, unlike under the dear leader, under Obama. So he liked the fact that China, in fact, there are many parts of Communist China he admired. He said, they're not afraid to do these dangerous bioweapons experiments. So, to John and Dunstable's point, Fauci is a traitor on top of being a mass murderer because he was colluding with the Democrats and the deep state, it was obvious, and the Chinese Communist Party to bring down President Trump. In the early part of 2020, the economy was roaring. You look at the polls, Trump was on his way to a massive re-election victory. Every poll showed it. But then came the pandemic. Then came the coronavirus. Where? From the lab. Who funded it? Fauci. In collusion with the CCP. And then what did Chicken Little do? He amplified a severe flu, and that's what it was, effectively a severe flu, and he made it seem and promoted it as a once-in-a-century pandemic, akin to a modern Black Plague. We were all going to freaking die. So, and by the way, in the diary, he says, we've got to box Trump in. He's got to be forced to lock down the economy. Shut it all down. Don't give him a way out. So, shut the country down, lock down the economy, tank the economy, and then create such a crisis, such hysteria, such panic porn. No, nobody's going to go wait in line and vote. Even though they can riot, Black Lives Matter, that's okay. They can protest 10, 15, 20,000. They're all an inch away from each other, shoulder to shoulder. That's okay. But you can't stand in line and vote. You have to do it by mail-in balloting. That was the entire system. That's what it was all about. Now, just very quick, I know many of you want to get on. I promise I'm going to get as many of you on as possible, but you need to hear this. A text message from 603. Jeff, it's a picture of Fauci on the cover of Time magazine. And right above him, he's in a $2,000-$3,000 suit. He's holding his glasses in the left hand. And he's kind of put his right hand, like his head is leaning on his right hand. Like he's the humble, great scientist. An oracle. He's an oracle. He's an all-knowing, almost inspired by the gods. all-seeing, all-knowing person of authority. And this is what the texter writes. Jeff, St. Fauci was named Time Magazine's 2020, quote-unquote, Guardian of the Year. Not even Person of the Year. Guardian, like he was guarding us, protecting us. Like a loving father figure. Just like Adolf Hitler was named Time Magazine's 1938, quote-unquote, Man of the Year. Neither one of these nominations aged very well. Very true, especially after yesterday. But this is why I mentioned the text. Because what Fauci did, not even just talking about COVID now, you got to hear this. You tell me if this isn't eerily similar to the Nazis, to Mengele, and to the Nazi experiments that they conducted while they were in power. So I want you to listen to this. And I want to give full credit to Rand Paul. He has spent years digging into Fauci's background. He has found devastating evidence of the crimes that this man has committed. I want you to listen now. This is Rand Paul yesterday. And he says, again, this started in 2014. He says, there's no question, not even you can deny it, because your name is on the checks, that you were funding someone by the name of Ron, I think it's Faucier, is how you pronounce his name, or Faucier. Anyway, Ron Faucier. And he was conducting gain-of-function research. But it was extremely dangerous gain-of-function research. In fact, his gain-of-function research, this is pre-COVID-19 now, was so dangerous that the leading 200 infectious disease scientists in the world signed a declaration, a protest, and this is what eventually made Obama ban it on American soil, saying you cannot allow this to take place. This is so dangerous. It could lead to massive crimes against humanity. They were experimenting then with the avian flu. Now just listen to this. Roll cut 4, Mike.
The one research project that we do know you did fund is the one that Ron Faucier did. And it's important to talk about because this sort of was the beginning of the debate over gain of function. This wasn't just me. I wasn't even aware of the debate 10 years ago. This was other scientists. Over 200 scientists at the Cambridge Working Group signed a protest because they didn't think you should fund the research and they didn't think it should even be published because it was sort of a roadmap as to how to make a bioweapon. So what they did was the avian flu, and this is important. It may be the most important question we get to here today.
Okay, so, and it is, by the way, of everything that was uncovered, this was the most important. Because the avian flu that they were experimenting on, that Fauci was funding and working with, had, I want you to listen now, a 50% mortality for humans. 50%. That means if you get infected, 1 out of 2 humans are dead. If this thing got out, forget COVID, which was 0.2 to 0.3%, not 1%, 0.2 to 0.3%. This is 50%. 8 billion people in the world, 4 billion will die. The other 4 billion, I mean, this thing will, just do horrendous things to your body. You may survive, but you'll never be the same again. But 4 billion dead. 4 billion. They were trying to create a new super virus, and Fauci was at the center of it. Roll cut 4A, Mike.
The avian flu has about 50% mortality for humans. The good news, though, about animal viruses is they don't infect humans very well. It will infect humans, but doesn't go human to human very well. Ron Fauci, with the money that you provided to him, did an experiment where he caused purposeful mutations to create a new virus, an avian flu that didn't just infect birds well, but actually infected mammals well, went ferret to ferret in an aerosolized manner. People saw this and were aghast, at the decision-making process that you decided to fund this.
Now, remember, okay, this is what he's saying. It's hard for it to go from animal to human. But what they're now tinkering with, this is what Fauci was funding, is that it now goes not only animal to animal very easily, but now mammal to mammal, aerosolized. In other words, like you just breathe it and boom, you get infected. And what they were trying to do was to then make it to humans easily. It was a bioweapon. The deadliest biological weapon, germ weapon ever in the history of the world. If we could now mutate this, play with it, create something that we can take from animals and then make it so transmissible that it'll just spread all over the world easily and infect human to human to human to human, sort of like COVID-19. But this time, it's got a 50% kill rate. The debate explodes. Scientists are saying these people are nuts. They're like the Nazis. This is Nazism. If this even gets out of a lab accidentally, you're looking at forget the Holocaust. This will make the Holocaust look like a freaking Sunday picnic. Fauci writes an op-ed in the Washington Post defending this insane, reckless, dangerous, I don't know what else to call this, almost apocalyptic gain-of-function research, genocidal gain-of-function research. And Fauci says, you claimed that the risks were worth it because the benefits potentially from knowing this information would outweigh the risks. Almost the entire scientific community was against you. But this is the kind of person you are. This is the kind of research you kept pushing. In retrospect, do you have any second thoughts? Do you think maybe sometimes the risks don't outweigh the benefits? Listen to the question and Fauci's response. Roll cut 4B, Mike.
This is when, the debate came about, and you wrote in support of this in the Washington Post, and you said, even if a scientist is bitten, even if a pandemic should occur, the knowledge is worth the risks. Do you still stand by that? Would you like to qualify at all whether or not the knowledge of gain of function is worth the risks, particularly in this case, since we now know 15 million people died worldwide? Many people believe this came from the lab. Do you think that the risks really are worth the benefits for gain-of-function research?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
I don't know what to tell you. Honestly, I don't know what to tell you. 15 million people dead because of the gain-of-function research that you've been involved in around the world. Not just coronavirus, other things. Potentially 4 billion dead. I invoke the Fifth. Now, I don't need to play anymore, but just please bear with me on this. The leading scientist in the world is David Relman on infectious diseases. He's by far the best. I want you to listen now to Fauci, to Senator Rand Paul, saying he led the charge against you. He and several others. Saying it is unconscionable that you're even doing this, that you even are thinking of doing this, never mind actually doing it. And that they were imploring you, saying, for God's sake, are you mad? If it gets out of a lab, it may be the end of humanity. Roll cut 4C, Mike.
We're going to finish with this question, and it's based really on that statement, that general statement in your support for gain of function, the idea that the benefits outweigh the risks. So there are many other people who disagree, and they aren't politicians or not. I don't know what party they're in. David Relman is probably one of the most esteemed, and he is a scientist at Stanford. He, I think, has classified clearance. He's been a consultant to our government probably for a decade or more. And he's written about this publicly. He says the opposite. He said that the risks of this research do not outweigh the benefits. He said the risks, we shouldn't do it. Richard E. Bright, who's been involved in this debate for 2 decades, says the same thing. Says we really shouldn't be doing this at all.
No, he mentions Relman and E. Bright because it's sort of like I don't know how to say this. It's like mentioning, Einstein and Oppenheimer. What I'm saying is you're talking about 2 of the leading infectious disease scientists in the world. And they're saying not only should you not do it, literally they're saying it's insane. It's madness. Now, I just want to end with this, okay? Because again, it's shocking. So he then mentions Kevin Esvelt, another leading infectious disease expert, a scientist at MIT. And he's begging, saying, for God's sakes, whatever you do, don't do this. This is so dangerous and reckless. Basically, literally saying, please stop. Listen now to Fauci's response, because this was why Obama banned it. This is why, by the way, most Western countries ban it. Because gain of function is a euphemism. It's biological weapons research. It's germ warfare. That's what it is. And whatever you think you may gain from this, the risk that this should get out, forget deliberately, just by accident, with all the protocols in the world, it's too much of a risk to take. It's the equivalent of a nuclear bomb. Actually, several nuclear bombs. That's how many people get wiped out. Listen now to Rand Paul. And again, listen to Fauci's answer. The coldness in his voice. Roll cut 4D, Mike.
Kevin Esvelt, who's a CRISPR scientist at MIT, also wrote about this gain of function. I implore every scientist, funder, and nation working in the field, please stop. No more trying to discover or make pandemic-capable viruses. No more experiments likely to disseminate blueprints for plagues. Dr. Fauci, would you like to at least answer this one question for us today and let us know whether or not you've changed your mind on whether or not the benefits of gain-of-function research outweigh the risks?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
That's Eichmann. That's Eichmann. When he was tried in Jerusalem. What Hannah Arendt called the banality of evil. When confronted with his crimes during the Holocaust, because he was really the architect on the ground of the Holocaust. And he just stood there like that and answered like that. You're willing to unleash a biblical plague. That's what you're willing to do. The Black Plague that nearly wiped out half of Europe in the Middle Ages. You're willing to play with stuff like that, create it in a lab, and put that many people and that many lives at risk. Upon the advice of counsel, I invoke the Fifth Amendment with a smirk, laughing like it's funny. This is a deeply disturbed, sinister, evil, satanic man. This is a satanic man who the death of millions means nothing. The death of billions means nothing. All that matters is his ego, his megalomania, his power, and lining his pockets. Him. and hanging out with the celebrities. I just want to say one other thing. When you read the diary, he casually writes down the number of people who've died in America and around the world, like in one sentence, like Eichmann. You know, oh, okay, we liquidated 7,700 Jews today. Okay. And then, you know, I met this person. Oh, I partied with this person. Oh, this actress. Oh, I think she's in love with me. That's what you see in the diary. It's sick. I'm telling you, it's sick. He's going on about the Kardashians and Barbara Streisand and Hollywood and dinners and stuffing his face and $500 bottle of wine that he's eating and drinking with Jake Tapper and other heads of the media, and how they all love him, and this profile piece and that profile piece, and he was on the cover of this magazine. And you read this and you say, I can't believe what I'm reading. Verna in Arlington. Thanks for holding, Verna, and welcome.
Hey, good morning, Jeff. It's been a while. How are you?
Good, good. Welcome, Verna. What's on your mind?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to share a comment and a question. Question, first of all, if Fauci has so many top quality lawyers on his side, why are they even allowing him and giving him advice to do this say what he's saying? Like, why aren't they being smarter with him? So I was just really curious about that, if he's getting such good advice, if it's not legal what he's doing, basically.
Verna, he's getting if I was a sleazy $3,000 an hour scumbag criminal defense lawyer, and that's who he's hired, okay, that try to protect the most corrupt politicians and the leaders of drug cartels and drug traffickers, that's who he's hired, okay? The guy they threw out yesterday. I would say plead the fifth. I said, you got a problem now. Any question you answer, they're going to nail you on perjury. And furthermore, you're going to be exposed as a complete liar and a complete fraud, because your diary directly contradicts everything you said in public for years. So if you testify, you can't win. It's impossible. So my job is to keep you out of jail. Okay, Senator Rand Paul now is doing the media rounds. He is vowing a vote on contempt of Congress. He says he has the votes. They're going to probably vote sometime early next week. And he says then it will go straight to the Justice Department and Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. And he says if he wants to indict Fauci and prosecute him, he's got him 6 ways to Sunday. So my question to you, do you think justice in some way will be done? Will Fauci be made to pay and be held accountable for what he did during the entire coronavirus pandemic? In other words, by invoking the fifth and now being in clear contempt of Congress, will Fauci potentially now go to jail? Dan in North Andover. Thanks for holding, Dan, and welcome.
Thank you, my brother from another mother.
How are you, Dan?
When I first called, I started my workout, and I got the best, longest workout I've had in a long time, Jeff. Jeff, people are finally, your audience is finally getting justice. Honestly, at this point, yeah, he's 85 years old. I don't care if he goes to jail. I just want the rest of the world to know what a scumbag he is. That's honestly, at this point, I'll settle for that, because I don't think, they're going to find him in contempt, but the Senate won't prosecute him. They'll issue a contempt order, but the Senate will not act on it. Basically what they did to, what was Obama's,
oh, you mean Eric Holder?
Right. He never got any punishment, right? So that's basically what's going to happen to him. But reality is, Jeff, this guy is a real, true scumbag. I don't know if you saw Bernie Moreno when he got in the elevator leaving the hearing yesterday, and they said, you lost your temper in there. What do you think? He goes, he's a real scumbag. So reality is. So, Jeff, here's what's, and it eats at me, Jeff. What eats at me, and you know, I don't have children, thank God, but what we did to the kids in this country was criminal. So what he did, Jeff, in one thing that's coming up, and everybody keeps calling it his diary. It's not. It's his professional journal, which he was required to keep. We're not going into his personal files. We're going into his quote unquote business files that he was required to keep as director of the NIH. So he says, "Oh, he dug into my personal diary." It's not his personal diary. What he wrote though in February of 2020, he wrote that he knew the virus was out and that the mortality rate had dropped to 0.02%. But then he went to Trump and said it was a 2% mortality rate. So Trump's, I remember the first press conference with him and Fauci. Trump truly looked scared. You know, you were looking at 6 million Americans dying if that was true, right? That it just the level at which this guy lied.
The deception. No, you're right. The deception, the lies, the manipulation. Dan, I've got to, and of course that set up the school closings, among so much else, locking down the economy, and what it did to the kids. How many of them committed suicide? They suffer from mental health issues, depression, God knows what else. It set them back probably for the rest of their lives. Studies have been done. It literally took away IQ. It took away IQ. That's the damage that was done. Speech impediments, facial recognition. It goes on and on. What he did is unforgivable. Dan, I've got to ask you, the way he kept invoking the fifth, the way he kept smirking, laughing almost, arrogant, and yet just getting hammered and hammered and hammered. Do you think that the credibility that he had built up with the media and the liberals, the image, the myth of Fauci, the all-knowing scientist, you know, I am science, was that destroyed yesterday? I'm just curious.
Jeff, I really don't know. I think we are so pre-Civil War in this country right now. So yesterday, I posted a bunch of times, you know, the clips of him testifying yesterday, and just basically looking for vindication of what I knew in 2020. You know, I hashtagged on Facebook. I'm not that smart a guy, Jeff, but I'm watching this yesterday, and I'm posting, and I'm getting, you know, friends that are a little more liberal than I am coming back to me, well, you know, Trump invoked the fifth and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, wait a minute. This guy changed the world with his lies. He changed the world. Like you say, Jeff, the kids, we don't know the total extent of the loss of education, what it's going to do 20, 30, 40 years from now, Jeff. We really don't. We don't know the mental problems that these kids have suffered, you know, what that's going to do 20, 30, 40 years from now. We know what it's done to the office markets in this country, the vacancies downtowns all over the country, the loss of billions and billions of dollars in revenue, the loss of businesses, like you said, to generational businesses, people that had, you know, family businesses for 100 years, gone. Right? Jeff, we don't know the total extent that it's going to have. And we won't know it probably for 100 years.
Dan, drop the mic. Honestly, drop the mic. I compare it to something like World War I. You know, like just a generational disaster. That's what COVID was, the reaction to COVID. This is from Marianne on Messenger. Jeff, if we're supposed to trust the science, why did the science plead the fifth? Because the science is a lying scumbag, fraud, mass murderer. That's why. Okay, just very quick. I thought one of the senators that really cut him up, I mean really, really eviscerated him, and I don't think Fauci's image will ever recover, is what Senator Josh Hawley did to him, Republican from Missouri. Listen now to Senator Hawley. Roll cut 10, Mike.
Well, nothing says honesty like taking the fifth, huh, Doc? Let's try something. What day of the week is it today?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color tie are you wearing?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color's the carpet in front of you?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment.
He humiliated Fauci, and rightly so. I mean, it's like, look at you. You're such a criminal. You're such a weasel. You're such a liar. You're so freaking guilty. You can't even answer what color your tie is. That's how much your lawyers are worried whether you can escape going to prison. Hey, you phony, you fraud, you. Now, very quick. What Hawley exposed is, remember now, people are dying. He's supposed to be the point man on how to deal with COVID and the response to COVID and people getting sick and people dying. But what was he really doing the whole time? He was lining his pockets, using his employees paid for by our tax dollars. So using our money, the employees that work for us, and he had them go out and get him cash prizes for him to make millions of dollars on our dime. Listen to Hawley. Roll cut 10A, Mike.
Get one thing straight. You don't have any rights under the Fifth Amendment because you've been pardoned, as you very well know. As the Supreme Court has been clear for a century and more, Brown versus Walker, 1896, when he has been pardoned, he may not stand upon his privilege. You know that. Your lawyers sitting behind you now shifting nervously in their chairs. They know it. This isn't about the Constitution. This isn't about the law. This is about contempt. Contempt for this body and contempt for the American people.
And why won't he answer? A part of the reason? Roll cut 10B, Mike.
But I think I know why you're doing it. It's because you don't want to answer questions. It's because you did all kinds of terrible things. It's because during the pandemic, you got rich, didn't you? You got rich while people were dying, hundreds of thousands of Americans, over 1 million in the end, and you were getting rich. And not only were you doing that, you were using federal employees with taxpayer money to apply for and solicit cash prizes for you personally. Cash prizes totaling over $1 million. You did all of that during the pandemic, didn't you? That's a question.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
By the way, now you know why Marino lost his temper, Senator Marino, because you're listening to this. You're like, this guy's a real scumbag. I mean, I'm going to just let the F-bomb fly. I don't give a damn. This guy is a real piece of you-know-what. What a POS. Now, just quickly, you got to hear this. Hawley lays it all out. I'm asking you, all of you, hundreds of thousands of people are dying. People are getting sick. You're running around telling everybody it's the pandemic of a century. But in reality, you're ordering your assistants, who, by the way, are paid by our money. And are you working on COVID? Are you working on a cure? Are you working on mitigation? Are you working on saving lives? No. Here's what you're having your people do. Roll cut 10C, Mike.
Your staff and employees on federal time, using federal resources, being paid with federal dollars, are soliciting cash for you. And then they're turning around and saying to the agency, we don't want just an answer. We want to get to yes, because Fauci wants the money. He wants it. We want to get to yes, and yes takes time. This is your chief of staff again, using federal email to pressure the agency's own ethics people so that you could get money, so that you could get rich. And it violated the law, didn't it, Dr. Fauci? Didn't it? It violated the law, didn't it? It is a question. You can answer. Go ahead.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
You phony, you fraud, you. Now, by the way, now you know why he needed a blanket pardon. And by the way, Fauci, it's now come out. You know, he said, no, I didn't want one. I don't know why Biden gave it to me. You know what's come out now? He begged Biden for a pardon, or to be more accurate, Biden's staff, because they were the ones who gave him the auto pardon. He begged them for the pardon. And now you know why he begged them for the pardon. One of many. Listen now to Hawley. He broke the law, man, in soliciting that money and getting over $1 million in cash and using his staff to do it. He blatantly broke the law. Roll cut 10D, Mike.
Law, as you very well know, prohibits the solicitation of cash awards or other personal benefits for federal employees. And it certainly prohibits using your own employees to do this. 5 CFR section 2635-205B. It says it right there in black and white. You cannot use federal resources, federal dollars, federal employees, federal offices, federal email, federal time to solicit cash awards. And you did all of it. And the worst part is thousands of people were dying while you were doing it. You were supposed to be the nation's doctor and you were playing one on TV. But this is what you were doing with your time. Isn't that true?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see why.
Yeah, me too.
I can certainly see why.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what I mean. You go, well, why do you invoke the Fifth? What? Is he going to admit that this? Fauci's going to admit this is true? Of course not. He'll invoke the Fifth. He got rich, filthy rich, while Americans were dying, while our rights and liberties were being suspended and destroyed, while we suffered. Listen now to Hawley. This guy was lining his pockets. Roll cut 10E, Mike.
During a 12-month, 24-month span during COVID, $1 million you knocked down in cash money using federal resources. Now you're worth more than $12 million. You've got a pension that in its first year paid out north of $400,000 a year. 1 million people dead, you're getting rich. 1 million people dead, you're using federal employees to get cash awards for you. 1 million people dead, and you're here taking the Fifth because you don't want to admit that what really happened in all that time was a multi-month, multi-year course of self-dealing. Isn't that true, Dr. Fauci?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Yeah, well, silence is admission.
He nailed it. He's basically, look, every time he invokes the Fifth, he's already saying guilty. That's what he's saying. Guilty, guilty, guilty. He's a greedy bastard. I'm sorry, man. He's a greedy bastard. Now, listen to Hawley, because he said, you know what? The sick thing with you, it was even more than the money. The money was sick enough as it is. But you know what really got you going? Roll cut 10F, Mike.
It was really about a power trip. I mean, through all of this, you want to be the most famous scientist in the world. You were so focused on getting every award and every drop of cash that you could, all because you wanted to be on TV. You wanted to be the sun god of science. You wanted to be the guy who was in charge of it all. You wanted to lambast Trump. You wanted to make sure that nobody else stole your spotlight. You wanted to be the guy.
Fauci never recovered from that. I mean, he was already getting beaten and battered and cut up and, you know, but I thought what Hawley did to him, he cut him to ribbons. After that point, and it was literally after Hawley had finished, this was a dismantling. He dismantled Fauci. Every single Democrat on the committee got up and left. They knew it was over. All right. Final text, and I want to go right to the calls. And I think this sums it up beautifully. Remember this, Jeff. When Fauci stands before the Lord on Judgment Day to answer for his actions, and he will not be able to take the fifth. Bingo. He made a deal with the devil. And I'm telling you, Fauci's going to have to answer, and answer he will. Brian in Brockton. Thanks for holding, Brian, and welcome.
Hello. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Brian. Okay. Go ahead.
The 80s, so it was the wild, wild west. So the thing was when people are asking me if I'm afraid of COVID because I was an Uber driver, I said, no. They go, why is that? I said, I work in a level 3 bio building. I basically drove through COVID. I talked to a lot of doctors and nurses because that's all they were going. That's all that was happening. Okay. And what I found out was that the medical, everything was like on fire there. But I talked to two people, and this was one of them. One of them was forced to take the jab. Okay, and she lost the ability to produce potassium and magnesium, which is one of the side effects. Okay. At 25, she has to take a potassium pill and a magnesium pill for the rest of her life. And one of my friends who had measles, what it did, I think it was chickenpox, but he got shingles after he took the shot because it activated it because it removed his immune system.
Brian, I've had shingles. Oh, I don't wish it on my worst enemy. It is so painful. It's excruciating. Brian, look, there were so many adverse effects. Again, not everybody got it, thank the Lord, but there were a strong minority of people got all kinds of adverse effects from what you're talking about, which is serious. I'm not downplaying it, but to heart attacks, dying, organ failure, brain tumors, inability to have children, infertility, massive blood clots. I could go on and on and on. Pulmonary embolism, which is actually what Fauci got. Ironically, he took it and that's what he got. So, and they covered it up. They covered it up and they lied. And to me, what they did was unforgivable. Unforgivable. Brian, thank you so much for that call. Brenda in Beverly. Thanks for holding, Brenda, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. And what I want to say to Lord Fauci, the patron saint of the Wuhan lab, in your face, you pathetic, pitiful, puny, obscene, revolting person. I will not refer to him as a man. Jeff, you're a man. He is not a man. I didn't see. You're a man, Jeff. I only saw clips. And the clips that I saw were precious. He looked like, I referred to him as the incredible shrinking man. He kept shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. His head looked like it was shriveling. I kept saying to myself, ooh, this is your reckoning. We've been waiting for this. We have been waiting a long time for your reckoning. And then I also thought, this is like when I lived in New Jersey. They have great diners, all-night diners, okay, 24/7. This is we're open for business, Fauci. We're going to be open now since this day happened yesterday. We're not canceling anything. We're not shutting things down. We're only just beginning, okay? And I know that I went through hell with my Delta COVID. I'm laying in bed going, Lord have mercy on me. I think you're taking me down with this. This might be it for me. And I'm not exaggerating. My son is my witness. He had to carry me several times. It was a nightmare. Absolute nightmare. I still have issues. I had some issues today. I won't get into it. Long COVID. And what my father went through. My father didn't die of COVID, but he was in it through the thick of it in 2020, October. That's when he passed. That's when I became known as the sign lady in Beverly, because I had to go around to different places, rehabs, intensive care units, holding big signs for my dad to see. Love you, Dad. Happy Father's Day. Okay? And the day that he passed, I didn't know it was going to happen that moment, went into the hospital, was informed by a little militant, a little Lord Fauci acolyte saying, oh no, only 2 of you can go, not 3. It's my mom, my sister, and me. And I said, oh no, we have authorization to go upstairs. Oh no, according to my little log, I only have 2. And I said, listen, you do your job, and I'm going to do my job. You have the same mask that I have on, and I got to go see my dad. And my dad, Jeff, passed within that hour. And I was holding his hand, okay? And nothing was going to stop me from getting to be with my dad, okay? Because he needed his wife and his 2 daughters with him at that time, because I know so many people that didn't get that opportunity.
Brenda, I'm very sorry. I'm very, very sorry.